Holy shit, guys. We've got a hell of a day. We've got a show, and we've got breaking news, which is amazing. So, TikTok, the countdown is continuing, I should say. I was going to say it began, but it actually had begun a long time ago because we are just finding out all this stuff on Michael Cohen, which means Mueller already knew it. So here we go. Interesting stories, interesting day. We're going to talk about, of course, Michael Cohen flipping on Donald Trump, Trump's reaction to that. We'll talk about that too. We have Fox News, Judge Napolitano basically admitting, oh, this might be a bad thing. This could lead to road to impeachment. We also have other news that's not related to Trump or Trump Russia. We have Bernie Sanders and his Stop Yemen bill. I should say stop Saudi Arabia from, well, stop the United States from helping Saudi Arabia bomb the crap out of Yemen bill. I'm going to explain that. That's it's obviously not called that, which is good because that's a little bit long of a name. But then we have, of course, a new House Congressional or House Caucus leadership. I want to talk about that as well. Oh boy. Then about why or how the establishment just screwed over Barbara Lee. We also have, finally, if we have time for it, democracy in Michigan. Not a thing. We have Republicans overruling the will of the voters on at least two really important pieces of legislation before Democrats, or at least the Democratic governor, takes over. Big shocker there. So, oh man, here we go again. Like I said, I'm going to get into the Cohen stuff because that's the newest in the breaking, but there's also something that is related. Look, we've got so much news going on. We've got Deutsche Bank being investigated for money laundering. Look, it's known as the world's laundromat, so this shouldn't be shocking, but that's also news that's going on. I'll probably report on that tomorrow. And we also have, in the same day that Michael Cohen basically admitted that, oh, yeah, Trump wanted to get paid by the Russians, and then I lied to Congress for him. Well, we also have federal agents raiding the office of an attorney who handled the taxes for the Trump organization. Now, is that related? I think it'd be a very, very big coincidence if it's a coincidence. It'd have to be a huge coincidence for it to happen on the same day that Michael Cohen says, oh yeah, by the way, I lied to Congress about Trump Tower Russia. Somehow, I don't think that's a coincidence, but that is, again, more major news. We'll probably get into that tomorrow as well, but that's breaking news. That's from the Chicago Sun-Times. Let me give you a short summary of that, actually. Federal agents showed up unannounced at the City Hall of Office of Finance Committee Chairman Ed Burke. So they showed up there, and Burke worked for the Trump Organization's taxes for the past 12 years before the two parties severed their business relationship earlier this year. So he did Trump's taxes for the last 12 years, over a decade, until earlier this year. And the FBI just happens to raid it. Not the FBI, sorry, just federal agents. So, oh boy. A lot of stuff happening in Trump world, and none of it's good. We also have the news where Trump has canceled the Putin meeting. So he's no longer going abroad. And he's basically stewing during executive time watching Fox News. So really, it's not a great day for Donald Trump. All right, anyway. Please, before we get into the stories, share out the stream, give us a like and a share. Also, please remember to, if you can, support the show, patreon.com/TYTNation, also on Venmo, if you want to go that route, or use the super chat. All right, anyway, and I'll read super chats as well. Okay, so let's dive in. I've been tiptoeing around it, so let's go. I believe this may be the start of the worst week of Trump's presidency. And I'm not kidding about this. This also could be the start of something even worse happening to the president. What do I mean? Well, earlier today, Trump's former lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, pleaded guilty to lying to Congress in exchange for a plea deal with Robert Mueller. So now this is different than what he had been charged with before, what he had pleaded guilty on. This is directly dealing with Trump-Russia. Now, earlier today, Cohen has been reported at showing up at a district court in New York to plead guilty to lying to Congress about his testimony regarding Trump-Russia. Now, according to the Associated Press, the false statements relate to a Trump real estate project in Russia, specifically efforts to build a Trump Tower Moscow. According to sources, Cohen will allegedly provide dozens of hours of testimony, potentially damaging to President Trump. So here you have Cohen that said, yes, I lied to Congress about Trump Tower Russia. Now, what's interesting, of course, Donald Trump, during the campaign, as he was the nominee, was apparently, and even beforehand, was talking to Russia about building Trump Tower. Now, he wasn't actually going to build it. The thing about Trump that he does is that he doesn't really build anything anymore, but he does license out his name. Now, if he was building the building, well, then that would carry some significant risk. He would have to put money into it and all that stuff, right? And so it could possibly work out to his advantage, or it might not. It could tank and fail, and then he would be out a lot of money. But if you license your name, all you're doing is just saying, okay, you give me money, and I let you put my name on your building. And that's probably what the deal was. So it is very likely that he was saying, hey, Russia, I know I'm running for president of the United States, and so I want this Trump-Russia deal. I want this Trump Tower deal. You know, I license you my name. You give me lots of money. Well, that is deeply inappropriate for a president to be doing. And so, now, let me go back to Cohen here. Now, again, this is significant because this is the first charge against Cohen that's related to Russia, right? The Russia investigation. So, very, very important, monumental, okay? Now, Cohen had already pleaded guilty to tax fraud, bank fraud, and campaign finance charges as part of an investigation run by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. Now, since it was in the Southern District of New York, Cohen couldn't be, he basically couldn't be pardoned by the president because it is a state crime. Now he's cooperating with Mueller. Well, there could have been a presidential pardon involved, but I think he pretty much threw that away by saying, no, I'm going to testify that I lied to Congress on behalf of Donald Trump. So now, according to CNN, their reporting, they said that in the plea deal, Cohen will admit falsely telling Congress that talks about a potential deal to build Trump Tower in Moscow had concluded in early of 2016. When in fact he continued to discuss it in August of 2017 while Trump was president. So, possible financial ties to Russia, here we go. Now, in the fall of 2015, Cohen, then Donald Trump's lawyer and a Trump Organization executive, was exploring the possibility of building a Trump Tower in Moscow. He did so with the help of longtime business associate, Russian-born developer Felix Sater. Now, Felix Sater, in emails back and forth, and this is very important, he said, quote, I will get Putin on this program, and we will get Donald elected. So, basically, he's saying that Sater reached out to Putin's people and then talked to Cohen, tried to arrange a meeting between Cohen and a Russian Putin representative. This is the government of Russia that now the candidate, then candidate Trump, is trying to put a deal with that would enrich him and put money in Donald Trump's pockets. Now, what do we know about putting money in people's pockets and doing what he calls legitimate, because it's a legitimate business. I got to look out for my businesses, right? So on the one hand, he's trying to enrich himself, right? And on the other hand, taking money from the Russians, look, if they give you, and again, this Trump Tower deal, right? It basically is just incredibly helpful to Donald Trump. It's almost like a gift. Oh no, we want to build a building and we want to put your name on it. And then we want to give you millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. Well, that's a win-win for Donald Trump. He's like, yes, of course. But the problem is, he's going to be the president of the United States. He's already been the nominee. And they continued the negotiations past when he was president. So now what happens when you give somebody money? Well, the Russians weren't just feeling generous. What do you think? No, they wanted to get something in return. Invest in the U.S. president. Get something in return. Now, what is something that the Russian government would want in return from Donald Trump, the president of the United States? Oh, right. The Magnitsky Act. It all boils down to the Magnitsky Act. Now, what is that? Of course, that's sanctions basically on Russian billionaires connected to Vladimir Putin, right? So these Russian billionaires, you don't mess with their money. That froze their money, and they're like, what? Well, this will not do. Obviously, I got to have access to my money, so we need to do something about this. And so this could be a gift to Donald Trump, just like many other gifts, or possibly even money laundering through Trump real estate to try to entice Trump to get rid of the Magnitsky Act. And what was the Trump Tower meeting about with Donald Jr.? It was about the Magnitsky Act. What was the, the Trump Tower meeting, right? So again, that was about the Magnitsky Act. What was one of the sanctions that Trump refused to first enforce? That is until, of course, the House and Senate got together and overwhelmingly made him enforce these sanctions. It was the Magnitsky Act. He said, I don't want to do this. This is a bad deal. But Congress voted overwhelmingly for the sanctions, did a veto-proof majority, and made him try to enforce it. And of course, even then, he dragged his feet on enforcing those sanctions. That's what I see. That is what I see right now. Now, let's get to more details about this, right? Now, Trump's company has signed a letter of intent to build the Moscow Tower back in late 2015. The Times had reported. And when Cohen saw a news story about Putin praising Trump, he emailed Sater. He said, "Now is the time. Call me." In mid-January 2016, just weeks before the Iowa caucuses, Cohen emailed a Putin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, asking for help for the project. So this is Donald Trump's personal lawyer, part of the Trump organization, reaching out to a Putin spokesperson, saying, "I am hereby requesting your assistance. I respectfully request someone, preferably you, contact me so that I might discuss the specifics, as well as arranging meetings with the appropriate individuals." Now, Cohen, this is where he lied. He said, well, I never got a response. And then we abandoned the project soon afterward. However, according to BuzzFeed News' Anthony Cormier and Jason Leopold, they have documented that Cohen's efforts to make Trump Tower Moscow happen continued through at least June of 2016. And of course, it appears that Cohen was still talking about the project over a year later. So once Trump became president, Cohen was still pushing for Trump Tower Russia under Trump's direct orders. Of course, as the Washington Post reported last year, Cohen said that he discussed the deal with Trump 3 times and that, as I said before, he had signed a letter of intent with the company on October 28, 2015. So he knew. Donald Trump definitely knew about this. So, look, man, this is a very, very bad day for President Donald Trump. This thing, Cohen, not just flipping, right? I mean, yes, he flipped. And he flipped completely and totally. But then you also had Manafort being found to have been informing Trump's lawyers about what Mueller was trying to do. and getting caught, getting his hand caught in the cookie jar. Oops. Those are not the actions of somebody who is innocent of these supposed crimes. This is not what an innocent person does. So, like I said, this is a very, very bad day for President Trump, and it's probably going to end up getting worse. We'll see how this develops. Okay. Moving on here. President Trump seems to be having a pretty bad day. Earlier this morning, Michael Cohen, his fixer and personal lawyer, pleaded guilty to lying to Congress about Trump's dealings with the Russians while he was running for president. Apparently, they wanted to do Trump Tower Russia, which would have ended up putting a lot of money into Donald Trump's pockets. So this was during not only the campaign, but after he had won as president, still trying to do this deal where the Russians would pay off essentially Donald Trump. Now, of course, when the news broke, Trump was not happy at all, and he decided to lash out to reporters against Michael Cohen. Watch.
So Michael Cohen has made many statements to the House, as I understand it, and the Senate. He put out a statement talking about a project which was essentially, I guess, more or less of an option that we were looking at in Moscow. Everybody knew about it. It was written about in newspapers. It was a well-known project. It was during the early part of 16, and I guess even before that. It lasted a short period of time. I didn't do the project. I decided not to do the project, so I didn't do it. So we're not talking about doing a project. We're talking about not doing a project. Michael Cohen, what he's doing is he was convicted, I guess. You'll have to put it into legal terms. But he was convicted with a fairly long-term sentence on things totally unrelated to the Trump Organization, having to do with mortgages and having to do with cheating the IRS, perhaps, a lot of different things. I don't know exactly, but he was convicted of various things unrelated to us. He was given a fairly long jail sentence, and he's a weak person. And by being weak, unlike other people that you watch, he's a weak person, and what he's trying to do is get a reduced sentence. So he's lying about a project that everybody knew about. I mean, we were very open with it. We were thinking about building a building. I guess we had in a form, it was an option. I don't know what you'd call it. I decided ultimately not to do it. There would have been nothing wrong if I did do it. If I did do it, there would have been nothing wrong. That was my business. So he's lying very simply to get a reduced sentence, okay?
There is so much in that. Holy crap. So I love when he says, well, even if I would have done it, there would have been nothing wrong. No, getting money from a foreign government while you're the president of the United States, while you're running for president of the United States, is not a good thing, right? So that is, of course, corruption 101. People generally frown on that sort of corruption because, again, this is worse than just the normal systemic corruption, right? This is actually a president saying, well, I'm going to take money from another foreign country. And then, of course, what's going to happen when they ask for favors back for that money? Because money isn't just given free. Like, I talk about campaign contributions all the time, right? So when you give campaign contributions, when a corporation funds a candidate, that candidate essentially listens to the corporation, or else they're not going to get any money anymore, right? Trump's pretty much the same way. This is legal bribery. Or, I'm sorry, not legal bribery. That's legal bribery. This is illegal bribery. What did they want to do? They wanted to get rid of the Magnitsky Act. That's what the Russians would get out of any sort of deal with Donald Trump becoming president. And what would Trump get? He'd get $40 million put in his pocket. That's what would happen. Again, Trump Tower Russia, all they would do is Russians would build a building and Trump would license his name out. And then he would get paid millions of dollars. And then the Russians would come back and say, hey, you remember that fantastic deal that we did on Trump Tower? Remember how rich you got, how much money you got from that deal? Well, we would need something We would like to get rid of the Magnitsky Act. Oh boy. So again, I love that. I love that he's calling Cohen weak for essentially telling the truth. Saying what actually happened. Saying that, yes, I did lie. I did lie to Congress about this because guess what? I didn't want to actually have the investigation go and look more closely into that because guess what they would find? I have a guess what they would find. But no. He said, look, according to the Washington Post, more information here. Prosecutors emphasized this morning how Cohen had talked with Trump himself about the project. So he knew about the project. He ordered it. He said, yes, do this. Reach out to Putin, right? Which Cohen did. Cohen reached out to Putin's spokesperson, talked to him, got a response, and they were setting up future meetings. But he says, oh, but you know what? We didn't actually do this, so not in trouble. You're still conspiring with a foreign country to take money. And, of course, again, you know that they would want something in return. So, look, here's the thing. Trump is furious because of this. You saw him. He calls people weak. He's calling Cohen weak for actually talking to law enforcement. Now, how crazy is that, right? Oh, he's flipping. He's saying things that aren't true in order to get a reduced sentence, and it has nothing to do with me. But it has everything to do with you, because he was actually talking about is lying to Congress on your order. But he hates when people flip, right? And flipping is nothing more than talking to law enforcement. So he's saying, I don't care about law and order. I don't care about rule of law. I don't care about the law at all. I hate when people cooperate with law enforcement. Oh, I can't stand it. But you know what I love? I love it when people like Paul Manafort lie about flipping and then secretly coordinate with my lawyers in order to derail the investigation. That's what Donald Trump loves. He loves undermining a law enforcement investigation. I wonder why that is. I wonder why that is. This is not something that innocent people do. So it is very clear that Trump, right now, because of this, is backed into a corner and is unraveling in real time. Okay. One more Cohen-related piece of news. Okay. While most of Fox News is either ignoring the Cohen bombshell today or girding up for a defense, Fox News senior judicial analyst Andrew Napolitano admitted that this might actually look pretty bad for President Trump. And he's going to say so in this next video. Take a look.
Every time Bob Mueller gets more information, like he probably got from Michael Cohen in the past days and weeks, which led up to the guilty plea this morning, it creates more work for him to do, because as we said earlier, he can't just take at face value what Cohen or any witness says. He has to corroborate it by going to the people to whom he says he spoke and looking at emails and other documentary information to confirm or deny what he said. So this actually extends the obligations of Bob Mueller and extends well into 2019. The existence of his office and its continued investigation. I don't know where this is going to go, Bill and Sandra.
But you went further the other day. You said you thought it would wrap in 2019, and now you're suggesting it could go beyond that.
Well, because
it goes into 2020.
I don't know what Bob Mueller knows, and I don't know how much work they still have ahead of them. But I know this. He's been going by the book. No leaks, no lies, no exaggeration. Everything he files in court is properly filed and is verified. And these things take time. when you're a prosecutor, you don't always get information in an orderly fashion, and you don't always get it from credible witnesses. It takes time to present the information orderly and to verify and confirm the credibility of the witnesses, and that's probably what he's doing. What is a surprise to us this morning, this guilty plea by Michael Cohen, is not a surprise to Bob Mueller, and they've had it in the works for a long time. They probably held off on doing it until after the midterms.
All right, so what he's saying simply is, look, if the president wanted the Mueller probe to wrap up, and he does, well, he's going to be sorely disappointed because this is going to continue, and they've got a lot more stuff to look at. In fact, federal agents have actually recently raided, and this is sort of breaking news, the office of an attorney who handled the Trump Organization taxes for the last 12 years. Oh, they're going for the tax returns. They're going for the tax returns, and they're going to look to see if President Trump profited off of the Trump Tower Russia deal. Now, that's, of course, the deal that Michael Cohen earlier today basically admitted that he lied about. Yeah, I lied to Congress about that deal. I said it wasn't going on past a certain point. I said that we nixed this deal. It turns out we didn't nix this deal, and that I personally talked to representatives of the Russian government. Oops, that's a pretty big admission. So yes, this investigation is going to continue. And look, Mueller, and here's what he said, right? He said that Mueller's team, doing everything by the book, no leaks, no lies, no exaggerations. Everything is verified. So look, that directly contradicts the president's assertions of a witch hunt based on lies and no evidence. No, everything's been verified already. Mueller's not going to come out with something that's unsubstantiated. He has been very careful. He's dotting his T's, crossing his I's, and making sure that whatever happens is verified. That's why Paul Manafort got caught. Manafort got caught lying to the investigators, lying to the FBI, about his testimony, and informing, wrongly so, on the Mueller investigation. Now he's in big, big trouble. He's going to go away for a very, very long time. And look, Cohen is going to face a significant stint in prison as well. So this is pretty disastrous, right? But as far as Trump on the Mueller investigation, right? So now, what does he think? How does he think Trump is going to handle this? How does he think Trump is feeling? And I think this is actually pretty interesting as well. So let's take a look at this video.
Think of the personal sting here. Michael Cohen was not only the president's personal lawyer, but his confidant. Michael Cohen once said he would take a bullet for the president. He has now pleaded guilty twice, both times involving the president, and both times promised to help people who are trying to bring the president down. This must sting the president terribly.
That might be the biggest understatement of the year. Oh, no, it might sting a little bit. Oh, no. So this is Trump world basically falling in on itself. Expect Trump to be more unhinged. This is extremely bad. All of this is extremely bad. Manafort, terrible. Trump, and look, Trump's own meltdowns and actions, for example, firing Jeff Sessions, putting in a political appointee who looks like he's going to try to protect Trump, against the investigation, against the Mueller probe. All this is looking terrible. And these are not the actions of an innocent person. Everybody knows it. Everybody can see it already. And this is just the lead up, by the way. The full Mueller report hasn't dropped yet. He is still gathering evidence. And we've had a lot of guilty pleas. This is the first one, Cohen, that has to do with Trump Russia. So it's going to get far worse. This today is just a little taste of what's going to happen. Tick tock. Tick tock. All right. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We got more non-Mueller, non-Cohen related stories, including Bernie Sanders. He might just be ending the U.S. involvement in Yemen. So I've got that story. We'll come right back. Around the Nation. Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here. Jeff Waldorf here with you. I've got a super chat here that I want to read from. Let me get to it. Ronald Reese. Thank you. It's very generous. He said, Trump has been breaking the rule of law for years, and he's now on an international level publicly. All of his past crimes, per se, are coming to light because Mueller is looking for alleged collusion and finding actual crimes. This is something that we've been saying for a while. Donald Trump has been a criminal grifter for decades. So we came out before and we talked about how he basically screwed the government out of taxes. So this guy has been grifting for as long as he's been alive, essentially. The art of the grift, if you will. And so, yeah, he's pretty much gotten away with it because of wealth and privilege. Well, now that he's in politics, obviously he's extended himself too far, rose too high, and pissed off too many of the right people. And so now ironically, here we have a wealthy white person who might actually end up doing, like getting punished for those crimes that so many other wealthy white Americans end up getting away with, wealthy white business people. So it is kind of interesting, as it's I guess you don't piss off the right people in this government. But yes, that is a very true statement. Thank you, Ronald. That is an excellent super chat. Okay. Anyway, so let's move on. Let's go to Senator Sanders. And by the way, like you just said, one of the ways to support the show is through the super chat. The other way is through Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation. So anyway, yes, I do read the chat. All right. Now let's move. Hold. Here we go. Okay. Now, Senator Bernie Sanders, along with a lot of progressives, are really upset about the United States being involved in the war in Yemen. Now, it hasn't gotten a lot of news, hasn't gotten a lot of press attention, the war in Yemen, because, look, I guess there's a bunch of myriad reasons. There's the news cycle being so insane. There's also the news generally not paying attention to human rights abuses in Middle Eastern countries. So there's a lot of, I guess, a lot of valid reasons, or not very valid reasons, for the news not paying attention to this humanitarian crisis. Now, I think the only reason that they're paying attention is now because of the death of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was a very big critic of Saudi Arabia. So now everybody is paying attention, and Bernie Sanders is actually trying to end our involvement in the Yemen, in the crisis in Yemen. On Wednesday afternoon, the Senate voted 63-37 in favor of allowing floor debate on SJ Resolution 54. Now, that is the joint resolution to direct the removal of United States armed forces from hostilities in the Republic of Yemen that have not been authorized by Congress. Now, Sanders has advanced this piece of legislation with Senators Chris Murphy, Mike Lee, and 14 other co-sponsors. So this is a huge Democratic-backed effort to end our involvement in the war in Yemen. Now, actually, all 49 Senate Democrats did back the resolution, which basically pushes back against both Trump and the Republicans who love Saudi Arabia. Now, they were joined by 14 Republicans, including Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chair Bob Corker. So, only 14 Republicans joined in ending our involvement in Yemen. What about the rest of them? No, the rest of them think, war in Yemen? No, I love it. No, I love the fact that we are backing Saudi Arabia, which is a fundamentalist, despotic regime that beheads people and is basically extreme fundamentalist Muslim. We're okay with that. We're okay with our involvement leading to mass starvation. We're fine with that. We don't care. And they're Yemenis. Who gives a shit, right? Well, progressives do. We do. Now, unsurprising is some of the Republicans who had voted against this piece of legislation ended up getting paid by Saudi Arabian lobbyists. Now, at least 5 Republican senators who voted against the bill, according to Newsweek, received funding for lobbyists working for Saudi Arabia. Now, these are Republican Senators Roy Blunt of Missouri, John Boozman of Arkansas, Richard Burr of North Carolina, Mike Crapo of Idaho, and Tim Scott of South Carolina all received financial contributions for lobbying firms that work for Saudi Arabia. This is according to the Center for International Policy. The report names Blunt as one of the top 10 recipients of campaign contributions from firms representing Saudi Arabia in 2017, along with Democratic lawmakers like Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Robert Menendez of New Jersey. Blunt's campaign received about $19,250 in campaign contributions from Saudi-linked firms last year. Boozman and Crapo received $1,000 in contributions from Squire Patton Boggs' PAC, which was working for Saudi Arabia at the time, and Boozman, Crapo, Burr, and Scott all allegedly received donations of around $2,000 on days when they were contacted by Saudi lobbyists. Saudi Arabia spent about $27 million on lobbyists in 2017, which is why the last time Senator Sanders tried to introduce this piece of legislation, he got immediately voted down. Well, what changed, as I mentioned before, the death of Jamal Khashoggi. Now, that doesn't mean this is actually passed the Senate. Right now, yes, you had senators voting 63 in favor and 37 against to move the resolution forward on Tuesday. But that is a procedural step that will see the bill move forward in the Senate. Right now, they've just allowed debate. So the final bill, again, could be amended, or it could be completely voted down by the same people who voted to advance this piece of legislation. So, but anyway, now here's the thing. What's going on in Yemen is a true humanitarian disaster. Right now, nearly 85,000 people, children, have died because of extreme hunger, thanks to the war backed by the United States. And you have 11 million people facing mass starvation right now. And yet, the only reason that we are backing Saudi Arabia is, well, again, because they're allies, and then, of course, the Houthi rebels are backed by Iran. So this is basically nothing more than a proxy war, and us, of course, trying to help our supposed allies in Saudi Arabia in exchange for cheap oil, etc., and weapons deals, and, of course, the United Arab Emirates as well. But we have sold them weapons. We've provided, at the very least, logistical support, and we have ended up turning a blind eye when our weapons were used against civilian targets. There was a lot of reports coming out of the Middle East from different watchdog groups that showed that they had found pieces of wreckage, pieces of our weaponry, with our logos on it and everything, in the sites of buses that have been bombed, that have been destroyed from the air in Saudi airstrikes. So these were civilians that were murdered using our weapons. If that alone isn't enough for us to pull our support, and it should be, then I don't, what else? Well, again, it turned out that if you murder and dismember and then try to poorly hide that murder of a Washington Post journalist, well, then that's when, of course, Democrats and Republicans, some Republicans, are actually going to pay attention. But here's the thing. Bernie Sanders has been railing against this for quite some time. And so Bernie Sanders continued to reintroduce this piece of legislation, and thankfully, he is finally able to get it out, at least into debate. Now, the Senate needs to pass this, as I said before. House needs to also take it up and pass it, and then it's got to go through Trump. Now, what's Trump going to do? Well, he's got two choices. He either vetoes the legislation or ends U.S. support for the war in Yemen. Now, I don't think that's going to happen because, let's face it, Trump loves Saudi Arabia. Why? It's because they buy apartments from him. Look, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is a friend to both Trump and Jared Kushner. So, is he going to end support? Unlikely. But nonetheless, this is a great piece of legislation, and I hope against hope that it does end up getting passed. It does end up in the White House, and they look at it and go, maybe we should. Maybe we should at least stop getting involved in this basically unconstitutional, unauthorized war. And it would be a very, very popular thing for Trump to do. So if he's looking to recoup some of his popularity, maybe this isn't the wrong way to go. In fact, a survey commissioned by the International Rescue Committee found that 75% of Americans oppose U.S. weapon sales to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. It also found that 82% believe Congress should vote to end or decrease arms sales to both two countries. So, if you were to veto this, it would be extremely unpopular. But if you were to say, okay, let's not, maybe that might help. Either way, I think that the obvious solution is obvious. It's clear, right? Trump should sign it. It would be an amazing achievement. And look, it would be the first time the U.S. Senate voted to advance a resolution withdrawing U.S. armed forces from an unauthorized war. So, and to pass a resolution. Now, again, the question is, will the rest of the Senate vote to actually pass the measure? We don't know. Though I do know that if lawmakers actually did care about the wishes of the American constituent, and not just the donors, the defense contractors, then we'd immediately withdraw American support for the humanitarian disaster that is the war in Yemen. So it's time to pull our support. It is past time, and so let's make it happen. And we can thank Bernie Sanders for putting it forward. Okay. I did forget to give Ro Khanna some credit because he had been pushing this in the House as well. All right. Moving on. So Democrats yesterday chose who would be House leadership. Now, we had a great progressive who was running for that position, Representative Barbara Lee. Now, Lee is very, very progressive. She was the sole lone vote against going to war in Iraq and Afghanistan after 9/11. So when the rest of the Democrats were like buying the Republican line of, oh, we've got to go to war, we've got to go attack Afghanistan, we've got to go attack Saddam Hussein, she said no, not because she didn't care about what had happened in 9/11. It's because she didn't want to go rushing into a war for literally no reason. That ended up turning into a complete disaster and a complete debacle. So she would have been a great leader because she showed leadership on that issue. She'd been in Congress for 30 years. She's very progressive. And not only that, but she would have been the first woman of color to be in House leadership in history. So that would have been amazing in itself. However, unfortunately, thanks to the establishment, it was not to be. She was narrowly defeated by Representative Hakeem Jeffries, who was elected on Wednesday by a vote of 123 to 113. So here the establishment said, hey, we know you're progressive. We know that you'd be a great leader. You've got years of experience under your belt. But you know what? We're not going to go in that direction. We're going to go with the centrist moderate. Now, but wait a minute. There are people out there that'll be like, Jeff, you don't understand. Hakeem Jeffries is progressive. He's totally progressive. No, he's not. He calls himself a, quote, pragmatic progressive, where have we heard that before, but says, on policy, no, I'm not interested in going progressive policy, and I'm very interested in working and reaching out with Donald Trump to avoid a government shutdown. So now let me go through why Hakeem Jeffries is not progressive, even though he is part of the Progressive Caucus in the House. Again, he's part of the Progressive Caucus in the House, but as you're going to see from these policy positions, not progressive. For one, let's start with the issue of taking money from big corporate donors. Okay. Now, that should be a litmus test, right? It's a litmus test for Justice Democrats. You have to take no corporate money. That's where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she belongs to the Justice Democrats. You also have Ro Khanna, who also takes no corporate money. So, again, that should be a pretty easy litmus test. If you don't take corporate money, or money from gigantic donors, then you can call yourself a progressive. Well, and the reason that, it's not just a contrived reason, but it's basically if you take money from big donors, you are more likely to represent big donors. You are more likely to take their calls, to go into meetings with them, and more importantly, side with them on their policy issues. Big corporations generally have policy issues that keep the minimum wage the same or lower minimum wage, or basically that don't help regular constituents and regular workers, but help corporations. So that's why it should be an absolute litmus test. All right, so let's go to how much money Hakeem Jeffries has taken from small donors. Now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she ran a campaign that was exclusively funded by small donors. Bernie Sanders, during his run, had a majority of his money donated by small donors, $27 or less. Well, what about Hakeem Jeffries? Well, it turns out he'd received quite a bit of money, but in his last election, he received just 1.3% of his total funding from small donors, which means the rest of it came from large donors or PACs, political action committees. That's not a good sign. All right, so look, strike one. Let's go to Medicare for all. Let's go more on policy, right? So look, maybe you can take corporate money, or maybe you can take big donor money, but still be progressive. I know it's a silly idea, but let's entertain it for a second, right? So how does he feel about Medicare for all? Well, apparently not very fondly. He had talked about protecting the ACA. In fact, he's mend it, not end it. That's his big push. Well, now, who has used that same rhetoric when it comes to Medicare for all in a progressive, in a Democratic primary? Well, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton said Medicare for all would basically end the ACA. Well, we can't do that. We can't take insurance away from everybody. Which, again, is a fallacy, because it would basically be a gradual expansion of Medicare over the span of a few years. Well, it's actually pretty good. And then slowly phasing out private insurance. Now, a lot of Americans, over 75% of Americans and 80% of Democrats, I think it was 85% of Democrats in polls, favor a Medicare for all single-payer system. And that, of course, is referring to a Bernie Sanders-style expansion of Medicare, which includes things like dental and vision and certain drugs, etc. So it basically plugs the current holes in Medicare right now and expands it. Because right now, Medicare, thanks to George W. Bush, you've got things like Medicare Advantage and people buying supplementary private insurance. Under the Sanders plan, you wouldn't have to, because it's more comprehensive. But nonetheless, this guy, no, not in favor. It's going to take away your health care right now, and I don't want to do that. I want to fix the ACA. Well, the ACA is based on a faulty premise that you can have an insurance system that is for profit and have it cover everyone and be cheaper somehow, and that's just not how it works out, okay? But anyway, so now on his rhetoric, right? Or not necessarily his rhetoric, but yes, it is somewhat progressive, but it's also like the milk toasty kind. I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense, but it's trying to use some of the progressive language, but not really. Like, for example, the code words about access to affordable health care. And, oh, I'm pragmatic. I'm a pragmatic progressive, but I'm not necessarily, the progressive. Really, I'm pragmatic, which means very small change, more status quo than anything else. I'm here to protect the status quo, right? Now, on that, The Economist had said that, quote, though he supports the principle of universal health care coverage, it's back on the ACA, he speaks of the importance of market forces and getting things done in a responsible fashion. Quoting Ronald Reagan approvingly, there's another strike, he suggests this means promoting a flourishing private sector outside the legitimate functions of government. Praising Ronald Reagan? Out. You're done. But also says, oh no, we need we think the market forces are important for getting things done in a responsible fashion. You know what that is? That is the status quo. So no, he's not progressive. You can't be progressive and be in favor of this status quo, which is the ACA right now. So that's a no on healthcare. Okay, Israel, right? Now in Israel, prepare to be disappointed. In the 2014, during the attacks on Gaza, which took the lives of a lot of innocent Palestinians, he said, when you live in a tough neighborhood, Israel should not be made to apologize for its strength. You know why? Because the only thing that neighbors respect in a tough neighborhood is strength. I mean, the only thing the Palestinians will ever understand is strength. That's why they keep trying to go to the UN so that they can create a second state, so that they don't have to, you know, defend themselves, or they don't have to feel like they have to attack Israel, right? They want their own state. You know who keeps shutting them down? The United States. That's what happens. So, look, that's not a progressive position supporting the occupation of Israel. Or, I'm sorry, of Palestine by Israel. Like I said, Israel right now is being run by a right-wing government that essentially continues to stay in power using fear. You know, fear of the, you know, Palestinians, right? And not trying to go for a two-state solution, which would actually end the violence in Gaza. So, no, not a progressive on Israel, not a progressive on Medicare for all, not a progressive on, as you're going to see, charter schools as well. He is actually in support of charter schools. You know who else is in support of charter schools? A lot of Republicans, Betsy DeVos as well. So, here we go. He's not a progressive based on both policies and record. In fact, as The Economist noted in a profile published back in September, he said, quote, Jeffries is not a member of the moderate New Democrats faction, but he often sounds as if he should be. I think that's fairly clear. He may be part of the progressive caucus, but he doesn't belong there. He doesn't belong there at all. And now, of course, let's get to how he feels about the most popular politician in the country, Bernie Sanders. Now, Hakeem Jeffries, unlike a lot of Democrats, ended up being a delegate for Hillary Clinton, right? So look, I'm not as critical on that part because look, there are a lot of politicians that decided, look, it's inevitable. She's probably going to win anyway, so I'm going to be a delegate for Hillary Clinton, right? I'm not going to be too tough on that because I think that a lot of these establishment Democrats had it in their head, well, that she's just inevitable and she's the one to beat Donald Trump. Now, these people didn't pay attention to polls. These people didn't pay attention to the weaknesses of Hillary Clinton. All they saw is, well, Trump is so bad and the American people will never vote for that. Well, we all learned from that mistake. But anyway, while the primary was going on between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, he decided that he would go in and attack Bernie Sanders as, quote, a gun-loving socialist with zero foreign policy experience. And he has been very critical of Bernie Sanders ever since. So, progressive, no. Not so much at all. Look, House Democrats had a chance to replace Joe Crowley. Joe Crowley was one of the biggest fundraisers in the House, right? He was a guy that always was there for the corporations, and the corporations were always there for him. They had a chance to replace him. And the reason, of course, Joe Crowley lost is because lost against the progressive. Somebody who was on the issues that were deeply popular. Things like Medicare for all, eliminating student loan debt, affordable college, a higher minimum wage, a living wage. She crushed him. And so, look, he's gone, and the Democrats had a chance to replace Crowley with someone who was progressive, to show that the Democrats wanted to go in a more progressive direction. But did they do that? No. They instead chose another big money moderate. So much for changing the Democratic leadership in the House. And of course, progressives, well, we're all insanely pissed. In fact, I'm going to read you some quote here. It's from Zach Carter from the Huffington Post. He said, Jeffries is a big money Democrat and a member in good standing of Andrew Cuomo's New York machine. There's no way to spin this victory over Barbara Lee as a sign the party is moving in a progressive direction. That's because they're not. Not only that, but guess who's going to be Speaker? Nancy Pelosi. No change, just more status quo. It's not good going into 2020. That means the same old Democrats and the same old Democratic way of doing things in the Democratic Party is going to be on display in 2020. That's not a good thing. Now, Margaret McLaughlin, a member of the Metro D.C. branch of the Democratic Socialists of America, said, quote, what is there to say anymore? The Democratic Party establishment needs to be primaried into oblivion. I love that. And I agree with that wholeheartedly because that's what we're trying to do. And unfortunately, we just didn't have enough progressives in office this time to stop Pelosi from being leader and to elevate someone like Barbara Lee. Nonetheless, it came pretty close. Now, one more quote here. This is from Ro Khanna, who's a representative who is a progressive. He said, our caucus today denied Barbara Lee the honor she deserved of being chair. But the petty politics of members of Congress will never be able to deny her her place in history. She towers above those who rejected her. Now, look, I think he's right. Ultimately, Barbara Lee would have been the best caucus chair for the Democrats going into 2020. You know, one of the reasons they rejected her that they say, oh, it didn't have anything to do with, her progressive stand. No, you know what it is? We needed younger blood. She was just too old. That's what frustrates me so much about the Democrats. And something that I've noticed. Because here you have a whole section of donut Twitter, donut Democrats, or I should say donut libs, that now are pushing Beto 2020. The guy who couldn't beat Ted Cruz. Now, look, I'm not going to diminish him. He actually did great in that race and got really close to defeating Ted Cruz. Now you want to put that same guy up against, what, Donald Trump? But it's the same thing, article after article. And they did the same thing to Hakeem Jeffries, right? Praising article after article from the establishment press. Saying, oh, look at this new fresh blood. But wait a minute, policy-wise, where are they, right? Are they progressive policy-wise? I don't give a damn if they're like Obama. In fact, I think that actually kind of works against them. Because what we don't need is someone who will basically do what Obama did, bait and switch, run as a progressive, campaign as a progressive, and then, of course, govern as a center-right politician that is business as usual. No, we're smarter than that. That's why progressives are saying, no way, Beto. No way. Beto not be the nominee. Oh, man. I know, terrible pun, right? When I'm trying to be serious here, I can't help myself. But it's that same thing that the Democrats keep doing, is they keep falling in love with these people who are young and they're attractive and they speak well. But in reality, they're still the same people that are pushing the same neoliberal, centrist, third-way Democrat ideology that we had before. And look, when Beto ran on progressive policy, he was much better. But when he stopped doing that, when he stopped being in favor of Medicare for all, that hurt him deeply, I think. And so, look, You know, the whole problem is the Democrats, they're doing the same thing that they have done before. They're discounting people using ageist. I know, right? It's crazy. Bernie Sanders, oh, he's too old. Barbara Lee is too old. We need younger people who are not proven, who are not tested. No, we do need people who are proven, who are tested, and who have been saying the same thing, who have been consistent. That's why people like Bernie Sanders. And I swear to God, these people can't figure it out. They just can't figure out. Why do people like Bernie Sanders so much? It's because he's been proven, he's been tested, he's been saying the same thing for his entire career. He's been pushing for the same policies that are actually going to help people. That's why people like Bernie Sanders, and that's why we get so frustrated at donut libs who basically keep pushing for, oh no, I want younger people. I want younger people that we don't know, that don't have a history, that aren't consistent on policy or haven't been or haven't got a chance to be consistent on policy. No, we're not going to go with those people. We're not going to go with the people who are tested. We're going to go with people who are untested because they're just so dreamy. This is how we lose, man. This shit is how we lose. Okay. I think I'm fairly clear about that. All right. All right, guys. I am done with the show today. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to check if there's any super chats. There are none. Hey, if you want to support the show, please consider using the super chat or going to patreon.com/TYTNation. That helps out as well. Venmo, Jeff, I think _ Waldorf on Venmo. Or is it a dash? I'm not entirely sure. But look me up. I'm there. You can help with the show. Please give us a like and a share if you haven't already. Please check out our videos. It's very, very important. If you cannot help us financially, I love you anyway. Please then share things out. Share out the clips, share out the videos, and watch the ads. It's very important. I know a lot of you do, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that greatly. So thank you. All right, everybody else, love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you guys tomorrow.